Good evening.
What'd
Welcome
you do?
to Here's the Deal. I don't know. I must have hit an extra button there. Anyway, I'm Shilo, your host, and I got my trusty co-host with me, Mr. Marv. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing on the second Monday at Shilo?
I'm doing. It started
don't-
snowing up here a little bit, and it's starting to get colder and colder. So by Thursday, I guess we're going to be below zero. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
always fun, right?
You live in the only state in the country where it gets so cold it stops snowing. So there is that.
True enough. True enough. Well, so tonight we've got a pretty good show. We've got the District 8 candidates. All three of them are going to be on, and their endorsing convention is this weekend, Saturday, at the Hazelton School, I do believe. So, but yeah, we have all three of them here: SuAnn Olson, Jeff Magrum, and Brandon Prichard. So, I guess without further ado, we'll bring all of them on. Maybe if I can get the buttons to work.
There you
go.
Good
evening. How are you?
Just fine.
Doing great.
Evening.
All right. So, welcome. Obviously you guys are from District 8. You guys are running for re-election. Your guys' convention is this Saturday, correct?
Yep. 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock at Hazelton School.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. So
there you go. There's the red hat.
Do we just want to go around the table right quick, and you guys want to introduce yourselves, and we'll go from there? We'll start with Jeff.
Yep. I'm Jeff Magrum, Senator for District 8, and running for one more 4-year term in the Senate.
Okay.
Hey, I'll go next. Oh, sorry about that, Shilo. Hey, Representative Brandon Prichard here. I'm honored to represent the great District 8, along with Jeff and SuAnn, run for one more 4-year term as well.
And I'm bringing up the rear, SuAnn Olson, also running for a House seat for a 4-year term as well.
So you guys said one more. Does that mean you've accomplished what you've been going for? Or are you looking at other things once you're done with your 4? Sorry to interrupt, but that was interesting.
Well,
Jeff
term limits would mean that we're done after this 4-year term.
But you've only got 6 years of it.
Yeah, but if you run again, it would put you past 8. So our understanding is you can't do more than that.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we have term limits on our U.S. senators, and John just passed 12. He's still in office. Just saying. So, well, no, it's great to have you guys on. I've spoken with Jeff and Brandon a lot over the last year and a half, and I haven't spent as much time with you, SuAnn, but it's you guys have really done a nice job with District 8.
Thank you.
2 freshman representatives, and then Jeff fighting this will be your 3rd election in 6 years, Jeff?
No, my 3rd election in 4 years.
Oh, it's 4 years, sorry. Because 2020 we met. 2022 you got redistricted. In 2024, yeah.
Yep.
That's fun.
Hey, it keeps you close to your people though, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, now they're talking redistricting again with what happened with the lawsuit. So are they going to touch District 8? Have you heard anything on that?
No, the judge already chose which map he wants, and it doesn't affect District 8.
So, yeah, that was some messed up stuff.
So before we go and talk about the future, I guess you guys just got done with legislative session last year. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to think about the session, how it went overall. Maybe if you guys got something that you're particularly proud of that you got done, we could hear about that. We'll start with SuAnn.
Yeah. So first session, I mean, it was a tremendous learning curve, for sure. One of the things that surprised me the most really was I had higher hopes for North Dakota. I don't know how many times I thought, really? I thought North Dakota was better than this. some of the game playing, was just real disappointing.
Mhm.
I always felt like if someone tells me something, I can believe them, and you kind of learned that wasn't always the case. And so still figuring that out. But for a first session, I feel like, things went pretty well. I was able to be part of some pretty good things. I sponsored the bill that gave a North Dakota tax credit for adoption, contributions to adoption centers, pregnancy centers, and maternity homes, which was really like if you gave $100, it would reduce your state income tax $100, up to 50% of your state tax liability. And I thought, well, that was pretty cool. And then we also did a sales tax exemption for baby diapers. Interestingly enough, there was already a sales tax exemption for adult diapers, but not for babies. So anyway, we added that as well. And then, there was lots of social things that were addressed this year. So actually had a bill that added the definition of male and female to state law so that anytime that's being used, we know what it is. And then the original bill I had, it had separate spaces for males and females for restrooms and locker rooms. And part of the bill I introduced was scooped into a different bill, which did pass. But we did add separate spaces for dormitories and any kind of correctional facilities as well. And then we also passed a resolution recognizing and protecting the rights of biological women. So I felt like for a first go, some good things, all of those passed. 5 of the 6 things that I sponsored passed, and then was a co-sponsor on a number of other bills.
Cool. All right, Brandon, you're up next, bud.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo what SuAnn just said. I think she just gave a kind of a brilliant explanation on how most conservatives felt about the session. There's so many people ask all the time, what do we feel about it? And there's a lot of things to point your fingers at and say, how can a conservative legislature do something like, not pass a bill to protect children from explicit pictures in school and libraries? I mean, that should be pretty obvious. We failed to pass school choice. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can be upset about. But when you really dig into it, I mean, I just feel that I was in the right place at the right time with some of this stuff. I was honored to serve on the Health and Human Services Committee. I didn't, know a whole lot about that going into that committee, but it just so happened that, we dealt with issues, for example, like the abortion ban in North Dakota to protect children and women alike. That was something that I didn't expect to be tackling during session, but, I've been to a lot of the Right to Life rallies. I've been pro-life my whole adult life. So having the ability to, be somebody who votes for that piece of legislation, it meant a lot for me. Additionally, what I was also proud to do, speaking of the Right to Life matter, in 12 days from now, we're going to have a Right to Life Day in North Dakota. I think we might be one of the first, if not the first state in the nation to have a Right to Life Day on January 22nd. January 22nd is the day that Roe v. Wade was decided in 1973. Well, in North Dakota, we're taking the day back and celebrating it as a day for life. And I was proud to primary sponsor that bill. And finally, speaking of some of the social issues, I was proud to join with my colleagues and ban gender transition surgeries for children. I mean, it's disgusting what they're pushing on kids around the country. We want to make sure that in North Dakota, we protect our kids. We want healthy, strong children and healthy, strong families. That was part of it. And that's just the social issues. There were a lot of other economic issues I was proud to join in on with. SuAnn mentioned the foster and adoption. I had 2 bills this session that were related to foster and adoption that I was really proud to get past the finish line. Energy issues that I joined Jeff and SuAnn with. So it was a really wonderful session in that regard. Of course, there's always downfalls, but I think we should look at the positives.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to talk a little bit about the pipeline and stuff here in a little bit, but let's go to Jeff here right quick.
Well, I'm kind of ashamed to say I had the most bills last session of any legislator, and obviously the most defeats of any legislature. There were some good ones. We did the minors in construction. It started out, the goal was to create a better workforce for North Dakota. So I threw a bill in that 16 and 17-year-olds could work construction, because it always bothered me that I grew up in the construction business working as, I mean, we were 10, 12 years old. We were already down the trenches laying pipe, and 16 and 17-year-olds are at perfect age for working. Construction couldn't work. They can't climb a ladder. They can't do hardly anything. So we were trying to open that up, and that met limited success, but the bill did pass. Probably the landmark bill that I got that was passed that I was primary sponsor on was the Beck bill, where they it allows Beck TV, who owns the Blaze, Bismarck Blaze. They wanted to be able to get insurance outside of workers' comp or work safety. So that's never happened before, where they let you go to the free market. So that opened it up, and I'm hoping that in the future, companies that want to be able to go to the free market will be able to. So I think that was the landmark law that we got passed. That's going to really open up a free market, because right now workforce safety has a monopoly on insurance for businesses in North Dakota. You have to buy their insurance, and so not everybody's happy about that. So anyway, that was a good one. But another one we had, which really doesn't do anything, was the Attorney General has to answer, like if I ask for an opinion on something, they have to answer you, where before you'd ask for an opinion. By law, legislators can ask the Attorney General for a legal opinion on issues, as long as it's not for a private benefit. But anyway, the Attorney General's office has never been very good about answering opinions, at least for me. And so I had a bill that said at least they have to give you a written reason why they're not going to answer your opinion, or else you can expect an opinion within 6 months. And that passed. I thought that was helpful. But we had a lot of bills that, and SuAnn and Brandon were in on the primary residence one, and that ended up being, in the Senate. The Senate's goal was to reduce property tax. The House goal was to reduce income tax. And so we ended up compromising, and we didn't get a lot done with property tax credit, but the $500 credit you see that everybody's applying for now, we expanded homestead tax credits to 70,000 income. You can still get half of your property tax on your home paid for if it's up to 70,000. We got rid of the asset test. Before, you had a limited assets you could have, so we got rid of that. And then the income tax that came across from the House, that'll be helpful to a lot of North Dakotans as well. And that one nobody's really talking about, but that's going to save some money for especially the higher income earners. So those were the successes. I was disappointed that we didn't get anything done with the property rights bills that we were pushing, and couldn't even get them out of the Senate except for the survey bill. And ironically, we had 46-1 vote in the Senate for the survey bill. And what that bill did is it made a surveyor have to ask for written permission from the landowner before they could survey on your land, because in North Dakota, there's an 1895 law that says that they can survey on your land without permission. So we were trying to fix that, because Summit Carbon Solutions was trespassing on everybody's land, and everybody thought, well, geez, they don't even ask permission. Well, they didn't have to, and so we were going to fix that. We got it to the House, and this is we had 46 votes for it in the Senate and 46 votes in the House. It was 46-46. Dan Ruby, who was one of my sponsors, voted against it. And I'm like, what the heck's the matter with you? The lobbyists got to him. So he was going to bring it back for reconsideration, because then you can bring a bill back within 24 hours and reconsider it. You vote to reconsider it, then you vote on the bill. But the reconsideration, believe it or not, Johnson wouldn't let him reconsider after all the session of reconsiderations. He's like, no, you didn't ask permission ahead of session. They actually recessed the session. They all had a huddle, came back, and then they said, okay, we're going to vote for reconsideration. And the way I understand it, everybody was so upset that they just voted reconsideration down. So now that one was just heard in the Supreme Court. So rather than us legislating the law, we're letting the judges do it. So now Northwest landowners, while not Northwest landowners, there was Derek Broughton, and Brian Jordy filed with the Supreme Court, because there is United States Supreme Court precedents that says that you have to get permission or compensate the landowners if you're going to go on their land, because it's a taking. It's literally, I call it a stealing, but it's a taking if you don't get permission. And that is the case was Hassad versus Cedar Point Nursery, that whole United States Supreme Court case. So we're going to win, but it's so frustrating that this has to go to the courts. And the other bill that I tried to fix, the law we tried to fix, was the amalgamation law. And that's where they're disposing of the CO2, the 130,000 disposal area over in Mercer and Oliver counties. So right now, if they get 60% of the landowners to sign up, the other 40% have to go in. So it's like, you don't want carbon dioxide disposal on your land, but too bad. State law says we got 60%, so the other 40% have to go along. We were trying to make that so they have to file eminent domain, because if they come to you and say, we're going to dispose of CO2 on your land, you're part of the deal, you have to sue the state. So you have a big burden, financial burden. By flipping that to make them have to do eminent domain on you, it puts a burden on them, because most of the time eminent domain cases, the landowner gets their money back, their legal fees. That failed. And the lobbyists were all over that big time. Now that one's going to be in the courts in December, in the Supreme Court in December of this year. So two of the laws that we could have fixed as legislators are going to be legislated by the judicial wing. So it really is disheartening that our legislators don't step up. And anybody that tells me that they're for private property rights that voted against them two bills is a liar. That's just the way it is. So that's all I got to say. It was a good and bad session. All sessions, if you don't do nothing, I mean, I would say that would be a bad session. It's better to get in there and fight for something, even if you fail. A lot of these things takes one or two or three or more than one session to get this idea out there. We're not all like SuAnn, go in there and just slam dunk a bunch of bills. I just can't believe how successful she was. And Brandon too. I mean, they were both very successful in the House. I didn't expect that type of. I mean, I have a wonderful team here. I mean, and SuAnn's build. I mean, her percentage is out of this world. What was yours, Brandon? But SuAnn's was about 85%. I mean, it's just unheard of for a freshman legislature. So I mean, and Brandon did really well. The problem with us is we're a little bit too sassy, so we end up getting targets on our back.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I'm curious, with you two freshman legislators, how did you handle the pressure of the special interest groups and the lobbyists and stuff like that? Were you approached much, or how did you handle all of that?
Well, one example that I found really interesting, I'm a CPA and I had done a lot of oil and gas work, and I truly enjoyed, service companies related to the oil and gas industry and all that, and knew a lot of the people in the oil and gas world. And not one of them talked to me at all. It was sort of like, we're not talking to her. We think maybe it was like, District 8 doesn't like us, whatever it was, but not a word, which I just found super interesting. So I guess that was fine. I didn't feel any pressure from them because they didn't even bother talking to me. And, I probably knowing that, it's like, okay, so I know a lot about the oil and gas industry because of the work I've done. But the position they've taken a lot on a lot of the property rights issues are so wrong and so abusive, if you will, to really the farm and ranch world, agricultural land. And they
didn't approach you.
No.
How about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of on a similar page to SuAnn there. I mean, they would approach me, they would talk to me. I think that a lot of them knew that SuAnn and I, and certainly Jeff, we're pretty set in our beliefs and our principles. And if you want to get something done, especially something backdoor deal, done. You're not going to go through us to do that. So I think serving on the Health and Human Services Committee, lobbyists are in there. Probably more than any other committee. I would bet. I mean, at least there's so many more of them coming. I mean, you have all the local human service zones. It's incredible how many interest groups and lobbyists come, and you'll have some casual conversations with them, but it felt more informative than pushy or anything else. I mean, you can look at Jeff, SuAnn, and I's financial reports. We don't get lobbyist money. They don't support us very, very often, and they don't talk to us too often during session. And when they do, it is usually helpful, but it's not like other lawmakers get the pressure. So.
One of the best stories I ever had was, so I was walking to Judiciary Committee that I was part of, and this person catches up with me and is walking alongside, and they're like, "Hey, just letting you know, there's going to be some amendments introduced, and we really need those." She goes, "We have to get those passed," because she said, "Well, I won't pass this if we don't have those amendments." And I just was like, "Well, you don't get a vote." But the lobbyists themselves use those words like, I won't allow it, and I'm just like, well, you're not voting.
Right. They use psychology on you. Huh? That's interesting.
So, Jeff and Brandon and SuAnn, I've been joking about this for like a month, but is there a way we could pass a bill this next session where everybody has to wear NASCAR jackets with their sponsors on them so we know who paid for them to be there?
That's just
Who's gonna sponsor that one? Well,
Jeff brought forward a lot of election bills for you, if you guys don't know, and a lot of it was made to limit some of the incomes because of the amount of money that was being spent on our elections. And he's a prime example of somebody who's had money spent against him when it comes to the governor. You had the Greenwich fight in 2020. You had the Naring fight in 2022. Like, there's been a lot of money thrown at removing you from office. So, I've been joking about it for a while. It's like, well, why don't we just have NASCAR jackets for these guys so we know who's sponsoring them instead of having to spend hours on the Secretary of State site?
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, Marv. I do want to have. I don't know if I'm going to do a bill or if we're going to try to go through Rules Committee this next session, if I get reelected, that is. But to keep the lobbyists at least out of the chambers, because there's no reason they need to be in the chambers. It's a distraction. That's our office. I was really discouraged with it, and I was harping on Dave Hogue, our majority leader in the Senate, this last session. I said, we need to get them out of here, man. They're just so bad. You couldn't even come. And it was a lot to do with the private property bills, but it was the worst I ever seen them. So I said, I know I'm new in the Senate. They were never this bad in the House. And he said, no, this is the worst they've ever been in the Senate. So as the session went on, I was kept harping on them. Are you seeing my point? Yeah, we need to get them out of here. And so some of them were getting leery of me. So they were literally leaving when I'd come in. But he said toward the end of session, he said, I'm starting to see your point. He said, they're really a distraction. I said, they can be in the hallway. Why do they need to be in the chamber? So anyway, I would like to push back on that a little more this next session.
Something that I think is really interesting, we had some important bills on COVID, on vaccine mandates. We should really look into how many of these lawmakers received money from places like Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson. I mean, there has to be a dozen. How many?
13 of them did.
Yeah, dozen.
Every one of them that was in the House that received the money voted against the study on the mRNAs. We actually posted an article on that here about a month ago under what was it? Pacts, Pledges, and Promises.
Marv's always on top of it. Holy smokes! But that's exactly the point. Is like, you know what? I don't know if a $250 donation is going to sway their vote from what they originally would have voted, but it looks fishy at bare minimum. At the worst, it did influence it. So it's a little worrisome, I suppose.
Well, I looked at it this way. When you subtracted that 10, you flipped it, it would have passed the House. that's where
with shekels come shackles, man. When you take that money, there's an expectation. You know,
See,
most of them can, a lot of them can resist the pressure, but some of them can't. And that's why I've never take PAC money, and I don't begrudge anybody that does, but it does free me up a bit from having them put that pressure on me, because I don't want to be known as a guy that I don't even want people to suspect that I've been bought out. I want to be a people's candidate. I want them to know I'm free and clear of the lobbyists. And I've learned this last session, I tell you what, I have a total disdain for the lobbyists. I know they need to make a living. They're there to do their job. But there's some of them that are way over the top, in my opinion. Some of them tried to intimidate me. I grew up in a pretty rough lifestyle, so my first reaction is I want to punch him in the face. You know, it's like, get out of my face, man.
Well, and that's the thing, probably why they in the chambers too. That's, if you really think about it, it's a form of intimidation too. To be watching over you, and like, yeah, it's especially with the amount of new legislators that they had. But I'm curious. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the last session. Let's talk about going forward with you guys. We'll start with Brandon this time. Brandon, as far as your re-election, what are you hoping to work on this next session, and what are your plans here for the future?
You know, one of the things that was so frustrating to me last session that I think we need to bring back, we need to protect North Dakota landowners from foreign adversaries. We had a bill that was brought forward this last session. It was watered down by some lawmakers who should be Democrats that are Republicans, and that needs to be brought back. We need to have a strong bill. There is no reason for Venezuela, China, whatever country you name that is not an ally of the United States. They should not be owning land in North Dakota, taking away from businesses and family farms. We need to have a strong bill that protects our land. And the whole Fufang thing is an absolute embarrassment in Black Ida, North Dakota. It's embarrassing that it was even started. The process even began. That the Grand Forks mayor should have shut down when it started. Our representation and on the federal level, I mean, I know some of them came out in opposition to it, but it should have been right away. We need a strong land bill. Of course, there's the social issues that we're going to continue to push. For example, banning explicit images in schools. There's no reason that should ever be, available to children. Jeff has talked about some of the land rights bills. I'd love to help Jeff and SuAnn with those again. There's just so many things that we need to go back to work with, and these are some of them. So,
you pushing that button, or am I, Shilo?
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, we were fighting over something. Keep going, Brandon.
No, that's. I think I hit it on the head. I mean,
yep,
I could
I
go
think
for
you did too.
Do you think you're going to be in Health and Human Services again, or do you think they're going to boot you someplace else after the trouble you caused this last session?
Well, I'm going to cause trouble wherever I go. I mean, that's what I'm elected to do, and I think Jeff and SuAnn are in the same. I hope SuAnn gets on a Propes or Tax and Finance. Maybe by me mentioning this, she won't, but she deserves to be on there. Jeff deserves to be, chair of energy or something. But I'm just happy to be in the fight with these two. So I'll go wherever I'm needed.
Now, there were two bills that came to Health and Human Services that got nicked almost right away. One of them was the infertility bill for peers or whatever you guys call the retirement program for state employees. When I had first looked into that one, I was a little upset that they were offering it to the state when normal people that deal with infertility it's considered an elective surgery to do a lot of this stuff. But then I do have a couple friends at the Insurance Commission, and they explained to me that it needs to go through 2 years worth of peers to study. So if that would come back around, would that be something that you guys would look at? Because what I was told, it was just chalked off as it was too expensive. And then, Health and Human Services still got a $6 billion budget.
Yep. Hey, now, good question, Jeff, SuAnn. You might remember that bill. And you're exactly right. Any insurance mandate on the private sector needs to go through a trial and the public PERS. I think the reason that the vast majority of us were opposed to it, I voted against that bill, was because it would use state funds to spawn. And this is going to get into a touchy subject. I mean, but it uses state funds to do IVF, which whatever your view is on that. As lawmakers, we were concerned that it would include things like selective abortions, and we will not be using state funds to ever do a selective abortion. With that concern, I think there were, including myself, a number of lawmakers who did not want to sponsor that fertility care. Now, if that part was taken out of it, would I be more interested in it? I think so. That was the concern that a lot of us had, was that there wasn't a responsible plan for people that decide to use IVF.
Well, and what kind of upset me, I mean, it's a personal thing from us. I've never dissuaded from that conversation, what we've gone through. But what I feel really frustrating is when you look at the national level, they are supporting funding for having gender reassignment surgeries, but infertility is considered an elective surgery, and people are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars out of their own pockets in an attempt to have children. And when that doesn't succeed, then you're spending another $100,000 to adopt a child by the time it's said and done. So it's kind of a something where in the long run, it'd be nice to see some sort of relief to people who are either trying to have a family or adopt a family. And I know you guys did some work on that stuff. So it was one of the questions I had on that one. The other one that I had questions on when it came to Health and Human Services was there's another one that came through regarding regulation of rates for nursing homes. And I know that one got cut apart before it even saw the floor, so they didn't even get a chance to vote on it. But what it sounded like the bill was going to do was kind of set a set rate for these retirement communities, for these nursing homes, to help reduce that cost, to limit what was coming forward for our elders, which I thought was pretty cool. So it'd be kind of nice to see that regulation, because you hear stories of people spending $10,000 a month for their folks to be in nursing homes because the nursing home sets their rates for everything. So just a couple food for thought aspects, beginning and end of life are both important, just like the middle is.
Yeah, I don't remember that bill for say. I would have to look at the bill number again. Again, we had, I think, 150 bills in Health and Human Services. That's an interesting proposal, actually. I don't know how I voted on that even, but that's an interesting proposal, and I think that should at least be brought back up for consideration. That was in the House, correct? That wasn't just in the Senate?
Yep, started through the House. Okay. So it was one section of a larger bill, and somebody nixed it almost right away. I'll have to pull the information on it later and send it to you.
Okay, yeah, please do. That's interesting.
Okay, let's go to SuAnn. How about you? What are you looking forward to doing in the future here if you're reelected?
Well, I'm part of the interim Ag and Natural Resources Committee, so we're wrestling with the foreign ownership of real estate and land right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that we can get something nice and tight that we're able to introduce in this next session. That will be very important. And it's, we're meeting all kinds of roadblocks where, all you're ever hearing is that, well, nobody knows how to get the information. How do we find out, who these people might be, or who these entities, whatever, that are trying to buy up land and whatnot. And so it's just been frustrating in trying to figure out a way that we can implement a law that has teeth, that will make a difference, and will protect North Dakota real estate and farmland. So that's a work in progress currently. And I'm glad that I got appointed to that committee for the interim, because I knew that was going to be probably the biggest thing that we address in the off season. So that one's important. I also went down to, they had a legislators conference down in Dallas that David Barton and Wall Builders and whatnot put on, and really got some great ideas for bills. It's something that really resonated with me was, you're seeing and hearing all these statistics about, suicides among young people, just various mental health things. and talked to a guy that that has started what they call a school chaplaincy program. Texas adopted it, and I'm hopeful we can do that in North Dakota. He talked about the roughly 2.5 million students that are part of schools that have that program in them, and not a suicide among them. And that just makes you sit back and go, wow. Because they really talk about suicide, whether, you know, that there's it's a spiritual thing that's missing, whether you believe it's religious, but many people, even if they're don't believe in God, that they're spiritual. And sometimes I think the counseling system or whatever, it never gets to that issue. So I'm exploring that one and hoping that we can put something together for that. That would be important to me, because it just really resonated with, you know, how do we make a difference to these young people when you just see how messed up everything is, you know, and then the various pressures that kids today are under that we really weren't generations ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, Jeff, you're up, bud.
Okay, well, there's a problem I had last session with, and this came from the lobbyists, that they said, "Hey, Magrum, anything with your name on it, the lobbyists are going to kill, because there's a game going on up there between, and it wasn't just me, it's several of the conservatives started years ago, between the lobbyists and the legislators. So their goal is to kill all our bills." And last session, I had a lobbyist come up to me and tell me that, "Magrum, anything with your name on it is dead. The lobbyists are all out to kill all your bills." So I'm thinking this session, if I get back in, I'm going to just try to work with bills that are introduced by other legislators, because and put amendments on them in committee or something, because you can't get nothing done up there with my name on there. But I'm so-called blackballed. But there are a couple of them that I definitely want to work with somebody on. One is the common carrier. So anybody, the way the common carrier, if you understand common carrier, so you want to build a pipeline. So all you have to do right now is write out a letter that say you are going to abide by the Public Service Commission's rulings and regulations, and you can claim common carrier and go out and start using eminent domain, which is what Summit Carbon Solutions did to a bunch of our landowners, took them to court for surveying. And it was basically saying that they're claiming that they have this power of common carriers. So that needs to be looked at. County ordinance over state law. Which one takes precedence? You have a county that meets, have public hearings, that have good, like Emmons County, Burley did too. Wonderful public hearings. People came in, voiced their opinion. It was like 99% in favor of the ordinances that they drew up, and the state saying that they supersede county ordinance. So does the county commission have any authority or not? What's their jurisdiction? We need to define jurisdiction of the counties. Somehow we got to get into that and get that figured out before the next session, how we're going to look at that. And then one other thing I'd like to do is what Troy Kuntz from Northwest Landowners calls it the adder bill. And that is, if you get eminent domain, then you get eminent domain, whatever market value is, plus 33%. So they come in and say, "We're taking your land, we're putting a pipeline here, we're going to give you X amount of dollars." You go to court, you say, "No, you're not, take eminent domain." You go to court, you get what they consider market value or just compensation, and then you get 33% above that, because you're not looking to sell your land. You're not looking for them. They need you.
Right.
So why should you not get a premium? So there should be a 33% above the market value. And those are the three things I would really like to work on, besides what SuAnn and Brandon mentioned. I definitely want to be a part of that. But I would like this time for us to have some sister bills and work them on both sides. These two were freshmen, and I did not want to put them. These people we're dealing with carbon. They're dangerous. There's so much money involved. We're talking billions of dollars. I didn't want to put them in danger of being intimidated by these people, but they're not freshmen no more. So next session we're going to take this on. We're going to have sister bills. so that if one gets killed, you got another vehicle going, and work on both sides and see what you can get done. And that should be the way you do everything anyway. But I didn't have really anybody that was a veteran legislator that understood the issues that we're seeing in District 8. And
Yeah.
this carbon pipeline did expose a lot of weaknesses in our laws as far as protecting private property rights. So we need to really look at some of these things and get her done next time.
And it really is true. I don't think, certainly from my own perspective, being brand new, I wasn't, you needed to go through a session to really have an understanding of what you need to do and how you need to do it. So yeah, much better position going forward to run with some of these, because these are absolutely need to be fixed, because it's just unconscionable, the position we put counties in, the position we've put landowners in.
Can we just pass a bill that says repeals 3822? 3822 is carbon capture.
Okay. That'd be awesome.
Just 3822 is gone.
So before we talk about that, Jeff, you kind of touched on something I'd like to ask you guys, especially Brandon and Jeff yourself. So I've made the mistake of kind of listening to some other talk radio during the day while I've been on the road with my job and stuff. And one of the shows I ended up listening to was Joel Heitkamp, and he had Sandy Sanford on, and they were talking about obviously the Nico situation and different things. But after she was off, he started talking about vetting candidates, with this whole Nico thing. And then it went to, the tune of, we have to be careful with candidates, and they brought Luke Simons up, obviously, and what happened with him. And they brought you up, Brandon, with your views on school and religion and different things like that. And Magrum, they didn't bring you up, but they brought others up, like
I'm feeling loud.
Jason Heitkamp, and they brought up Eric Help and stuff. And so I'm interested on what you guys think of that, because obviously, Brandon, especially you, it kind of seems like you're going to be the next one that they come after, so to speak, especially for your views on schools and religion and different things like that. So I'm just kind of wondering where your mindset is there as far as that.
Well, thanks for the question. Interestingly enough, Joel, Jason's going to be upset I mentioned him. Joel invited me on the show this week. I said I could make it. I don't know, he hasn't gotten back to me. I'd love to be on a show, talk to him a little bit. But, I'm going to do what I believe is best. I'm going to do what I know is right. I believe that this country was founded on Christian values. I believe that children are better with God and a strong family around. And look, our country is deserting the family. And if we want to have a shot in the dark, we have to restore the family, and we have to bring faith back into that family life. And I'm going to fight for that. And if people are upset about it, I first have to question who hurt them. Maybe they need to work on some stuff, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to do. So
that's good to hear. And I agree with everything you said, and that's a lot of the problem is we live in such a godless society now that, since when is the right thing wrong? And we can go on and on for days on that whole situation, but I'm with you there, Brandon. So
yeah, thank you.
Do you got some questions, Marvin?
Well, I was going to ask one for SuAnn and for Jeff, because SuAnn's up in Baldwin, Jeff's down south. This last session, we had the bill that came through that kind of limited funding for rural development, rural technology. Nathan brought forward two bills that kind of went after that on the behest of Chamber of Commerce. Go Bullets, by the way, SuAnn. I played for them when I was in grade school, when I was going to Naughton, because we were all tied together.
Yeah.
So, but it's like, I'd like to see more rural growth instead of everybody being pushed to the city. And I know you were on the agriculture and stuff, but I'm originally from Lair. I mean, if you've been through there, you blink, you miss it. And it's sad what it's come to from when I was growing up. You know, you had churches, you had grocery stores, you had a working elevator, you had that stuff. Like, I'd like to see some more rural growth, but what do you guys think that's going to take to get people to move back out into those communities or to want to stay there with their families?
Well, one of the bills that started out on the Senate and did get passed and become law was relatively small, but it allocated some money to help with what they call food deserts, where you get, you know, big swaths of land where there really isn't access to a grocery store, you know. And Senator Murdahl had introduced it on the Senate side. And, you know, up in their area, they had gotten a little bit of grant money. And then at the same time, the local school had actually lost their food supplier. And so they were able to wrap that in as well. And they, you know, they were able to do ordering in one grocery store so that they got a little bit better buying power. And they actually stuck some, you know, like a food storage units in a couple of towns that didn't have grocery stores any longer, where people could order. It would have been dropped off, kept in, you know, whether it's freezer, refrigerator, or ambient temperature kind of stuff. You know, if you don't have a grocery store in a community, that community is not going to survive. It's one of just the bare bones kind of things. And I liked that idea a lot. And there's just so many parts of the state that you got to go a distance, or you got to go to one of the much larger towns to get to a grocery store. And this was kind of done on a test basis. I think they only allocated $1 million to it, which, when you think of the state spending $19 billion, it's like, well, okay, so we're going to use $1 million to do some grants. People had to come up with a plan and figure out what worked for their area. They didn't have to necessarily replicate what had happened in the Park River area, somewhere up that way. But it made me think of even some of the small towns in District 8, in Emmons County, even that would potentially be something that could help some of those communities if it comes to that as well. So I think that's one way that you can help keep populations in small towns, because I'm just talking to some Lions members that came out of Bismarck up to the Wilton Lions that I'm a part of last night. And, their comment was, it's like, well, you have the smaller towns generally have such a much better sense of community than what you feel in the large towns and cities. And to foster that, to keep them growing, I mean, it can be a better place for children to grow up. It can be, more affordable for families. I mean, there's lots of good reasons why small towns, hopefully we can keep them prosperous and doing well. But at a minimum, it seemed like this was one way to start, at least, to try to keep groceries in an area, because you'll empty a town out for sure if there's not even that level of service.
Yeah, well, and I mean, you look at the last, 3-4 decades, I mentioned the Bullets reference earlier, but you had Naughton, you had Minokan, you had Mackenzie, but like towns that have gone away, like Telfer. I mean, do you remember the Telfer tornadoes?
I do.
So like we saw a lot of that. We see a lot of that push into town. It'd be nice to see some of that back out into the country, if you know what I mean.
Oh, for sure.
I know we are looking forward to eventually being out of Bismarck. And it's not that I don't like the convenience of living in town, but I miss farming, I miss ranching, I miss having a mile before I saw a neighbor. and I think overall, like, it'd be nice to see more rural growth again, where it's families moving out, not Bill Gates buying up land.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that kind of brings you right back to the CO2 pipeline that is cutting through a lot of rural properties. That has the potential, especially if there would, the first time there's an issue somewhere along that route. I mean, talk about affecting people's property values. I mean, their home, if they're farmers or ranchers, it's that real estate is their biggest asset. and look at what would happen to that. An issue anywhere will cause property values along the whole area, and not just if that pipeline is sitting on your property, but if you're anywhere in proximity to it, it's going to affect property values. And that is not going to serve the rural areas well either, that this is going through, because all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, no, we don't want to live there, you know.
Well, and you look at the proposal north of Bismarck where they're cutting across Dr. Warford's land, that stretch along 97th. Section 27 is actually split into two between two different property owners, but there's a ravine that starts in 27 and it runs all the way out almost to Minokan. It's a low-lying area, but just south of where 97th is that giant housing development on 71st. So with that, it's all shifting clay out there. And so you run a pipeline through there, you have a hard thaw, you have a quick freeze, you have a lot of rain, that land's going to start shifting. And I don't care how good a pipeline is, but how many years is it going to take for that to crack on that kind of terrain? So like that's something that we had looked at, because I want to move back out into that area. And the fact that they were running it along that stretch of land, I came and actually testified against when they had the hearings, because I grew up working that area. We know that land. No surveyor is going to come out and say, oh, this is a safe place to run when there is 60 new houses less than a mile south of where they want to put this pipe. So, sorry, I know it's a random tangent, but like that's personal, because they're literally dropping that in my backyard, you know? So, and if you guys are in District 8, so you've seen the fog roll through those ravines. You know exactly what that carbon would follow.
Yep, for sure.
So what are your guys' constituents telling you about the carbon pipeline? Are they the most against it, for it, half and half?
Well, I have yet to say I've really spoken to somebody that's very much for it. I mean, you know, if you're going to take some kind of a straw poll, it would certainly be at least 90-10 against or something. I mean, it's, you know, and it just I just find it baffling then when you've got, you know, whatever the different counties, the cities that say, no, we don't want this. And it's like it's being railroaded through no matter what. I mean, like, it doesn't matter what the people that will live with it want.
So with the purchase thing that you guys were talking about, why don't you guys change it so it's a 99-year lease that they have to pay versus a one-time shot?
Well, I think we need to get rid of the 99-year lease. That's another thing that could be looked at this next session. But then you have the argument that, well, should the government be getting involved in private contracts? Well, if you're for private property rights, I'm 58 years old. I could sign a 30-year deal with somebody. I could maybe live to be 88. You know, that's reasonable. But 99 years, why should I sell the property rights for the next generations? It's not my right to sell their property rights.
No, so I didn't say
reality, we should almost have a 30-year contract maximum.
Yeah.
As one generation is all you can sell, because 30 years is a generation in the eyes of the state. So you should only be able to sign a 30-year deal. Now, is that our government's job to protect future people that aren't even born yet, their rights? A kid being born today in 30 years, he's 30 years old already. He wants to buy a piece of land that's unencumbered.
No, Jeff, that's not what I meant. I mean, they lease it from the landowner owners, not giving away rights. They're leasing that stretch of land.
They do lease it for 99 years, which is perpetual, but you're saying pay them for 99 years rather than one.
Yes.
Well, that would be good.
Yeah, that would change things, because almost none of these projects would be running for 99 years.
I know. I know. You run it for a 99-year lease fixed for inflation rates over the course of 100 years, and there is your balloon payment that they can choose to take or deny.
Well, then we're kind of getting into private contracts again, and that I think term might be better, but I mean, a landowner could say that, hey, I want to pay him in every year. Why is the guy where you're dumping the disposing? It's the same way with windmills. The guy with the windmill gets a yearly payment. The guy with the power line running across his land gets a one-time payment. How is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
That power can't flow unless it goes through his land.
Yeah, you could just not have a pipeline.
Yep, there we go. How about we have pipelines that are not for waste disposal?
Well, you got septic, sewage for lagoons and so on, but this is hazardous waste.
Yeah, this is hazardous waste. I mean, they're talking about putting nuclear back up north again on Sawyer, from what I heard too. We already killed that once.
I haven't heard that. That's wild.
Yeah.
It's not surprising.
Yeah, well, we fought it 30 years ago, and it's going to come back around again because they want that granite deposit up there.
Yeah. They view North Dakota as a dump. I think that we should view it as the beautiful landscape and the great opportunity that it is. But they're what we see as opportunity, they see as a landfill. So too bad.
Well, let's take it even a step further, Brandon, and put it to you this way: that all of this, and it doesn't matter whether it's these pipelines and these easements, or we're dealing with a data center up here in Williston. It's all about controlling the resources and controlling the people. Once you have the resources, whether it be the land, water, and air, we have to listen, and that's big picture what this is all about.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people understand that. They get focused on what they get tunnel vision on what they're told on the radio or TV, and they don't think big picture.
Yeah.
So Jeff, I know you said you had a lot of hard times, but one of the things that I thought was pretty cool is even though you got beat up for every election bill that you brought forward, I did see that they did end up earmarking over $1 million to the Secretary of State in his final budget here for HAVA compliance. So that had to feel like a small victory when it came to all the fighting you had to do for what you brought forward here.
Well, you never know what good you're going to do. You always just keep pushing forward. And a lot of times, indirectly, you do have some success. You're right. That was a good victory there. And I think, and I don't know where you guys are at on the Election Integrity Act, but I think that's going to be a huge step. I mean, that would fix the elections, especially going back to one-day voting, getting rid of the mail-in balloting and sticking with the absentee balloting and so on. So that would be a huge success. But one other thing before we go, I did want to say, when you asked what else we need to address this next session, I'm assuming the property tax measure is going to pass. So we need to look at what we can, because Becker said the other night we were talking, he said there's 8 bills need to be passed to make it right. So the issue is it's a constitutional measure, so it's going to take 2/3 vote in the House and Senate. And of course, the governor's got to sign them, but to address some of the disparities in that measure. So those are something too we need to look at. We need to get together. He said he's got the ideas. There's no bills drawn up, but somebody's probably going to have to prepare those in anticipation the measure's going to pass. I think it's going to be very close. I've talked to both sides. Some are adamantly against it. Some are really for it. I think it's going to be, I do believe it'll win by a slight margin, maybe 55, maybe 60%. I don't know. But anyway, there's some issues that need to be addressed that measure is so vague. I'm so discouraged with the vagueness of it, but there's things that can be fixed legislatively. But like I said, constitutional measures take 2/3 vote in the House for the first 7 years. House in the legislature, for the first 7 years to change anything in that measure.
Yeah. Well, and I signed on to it as a carrier, and it was because I had talked to so many legislators that had these great big ideas of what they were going to do for property tax relief. And I know you had success with yours, but there was so many that had promised things when I was campaigning, and I didn't see any of them bringing bills forward or even voting for the ones that got brought forward. So when Rick had called me to sign on to it, I'm like, well, send it here. I want to look at it. I understood that there is vagueness there, but I've helped you with bills in the past, so I knew there was stuff that we could do to address the fix. So that's why I got on board with it, because I keep getting text messages and photos and phone calls of people and their property taxes and how much they've gone up since this bill was even introduced. And the fact that we have the chamber, we have North Dakota United, we have the League of Cities, we have the League of Counties all speaking out against it, usually means that somebody's on the right track for something. So,
well, of course,
and
that's their
there's
gravy.
a lot of stuff to fix on it, but
I do have one gripe though with when people say their property taxes, the big chunk of their property tax is school tax, which the hope was this last session to get at least have the state pay all of the school tax.
Yep.
And if you look at your bill, at least a third of it's going to go to the schools roughly. So, but you go to the school meetings when they're talking about their property tax increases, nobody shows up.
Yeah.
And one thing that moves government is people. When people show up, the government listens. I don't care if it's school board, legislature, whatever. But if people don't show up, silence is consent. So
Well,
our own laziness is a part of the problem. We're trying to blow the whole thing up to fix a problem that people want to sit at home and gripe instead of get up and go to the meeting. And another thing, this measure is going to hurt the rural areas as is. It's going to be very bad for the rural areas. I've been drilling down in this thing and trying to get, and it exempts all the federal government's obligation to the state. It exempts windmills. It exempts all utilities. It exempts railroads. All of these are getting a free ride just to save somebody from having to pay tax. And why should I pay the tax on your road? Why should I come to Bismarck and have to pay a higher sales tax so you don't have to pay property tax on your house? And then I got to come down here, and the way the measure reads, there's a caps out in the 2024 budget, so you can never get any more money than your 2024 budget. Bismarck can add a heck of a lot of taxes onto their they can put 2 cents on the property on sales tax up there and get a heck of a lot of money. They can put $50 on every house for snow removal and get a lot of money. What's these little towns down here going to put on to recover in 2024? So let's just say the budget's $3 million, and I live in Emmons County. Emmons County's $3 million. You can never get any more from the state. So now in 2030, we need more money. So then what do? We put a sales tax on. We don't have the businesses down here to generate that kind of income. We're going to have to put a snow removal tax. We're going to have to put a fire protection tax or a fee. And then that goes on the land, and it's still going to, what if you don't pay your fee? Do they take your land? So there's a lot of questions. Right now, you got your homestead credits. Anybody 65 and older that makes under $40,000 pays zero property tax on their home. Now that's still going to be in effect. But down the road, when they need money, they're going to put a fee. They're going to raise sewer and water. They're going to put a snow removal fee, whatever, a special assessment. Now, that same old person that was getting them same services paid for by state taxpayers is going to have to pay a fee on top of it. That's not going to. So now do we start another program to pay for that fee? So then, because then people can't afford it, right? They might be a disabled veteran. They might be an indigent. I don't know. I'm just saying there's so much in that measure that is left blank that needs to be looked at. It's going to be a lot of work next session to get this straight, because the rural areas are going to take in the shorts. I can tell you that. And we're talking about getting people in the rural areas by depriving them of services is not going to help to get people in the rural areas, because like I said, the base, this measure really helps the large communities. It really is good for the large communities. It's going to be really awesome for us right away. We're all going to have all that money in our pocket. But as time goes on, there's going to be some really tough decisions on fees, because nobody's going to go out and do that street maintenance for the same price they're doing in 2024 and 2030. Equipment's not going to cost the same amount. Insurances aren't going to cost the same. Everything's going up. So somehow there's going to have to be money to fill in that gap. And I agree the state has the money now to pay for all of this. And we probably will for years. But I got in 2017 In 2017, we were cutting. It was fun. I liked it. We cut government down a lot in 2017. That's only 7 years ago that the state had a major shortfall. So it's not unrealistic to look in 5 years that we could have a major shortfall, and it's going to be good. We're going to cut a lot of excess. That's great. I love all them ideas, but I do have a lot of concerns about some of the negative side effects of this measure. I signed the petition. I'm probably going to vote for it because we're just going to have to fix these issues. And I know people want to get rid of their property tax, but somebody said to me, well, why should I pay property tax on my home? I said, well, why should I pay to take care of your road? I own land. I pay for the road. I don't mind. I see the blade out here blading it. I see them graveling it. I see the snowplow come by. It's a property tax that I see and work. Income tax is way worse because you don't see where it goes. Property tax, you see the firemen go out and put out a fire. I mean, you see the ambulance running. You see, so property tax, I hate it. Everybody does, but it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. But if we're going to get rid of it, we're going to have to come up with some solutions.
So something to that, Jeff. The part that I see regularly abused when it comes to Century Code and property tax and these bids is, through Century Code, they have to put out for bids for any improvement projects, whether it's the schools, the cities, the counties, yada, yada, yada. The second set of that section in Bismarck Public Schools is notorious for using it is they'll declare it an emergency so that they don't have to go through the full bid process. They accept the first bid from John
There's no doubt. It's the immoral use
where they're scratching their buddies' backs. And
I mean, it's the tax. The tax really isn't the problem. It's the immoral use of it. People misuse it. They give their buddies benefits, or I see it all the time. You see it in the legislature how they wasted the money. Really, if it wasn't for the wasters that are taking advantage and immorally spending this money, we wouldn't even have this measure. We would have already been buying down property taxes. This would all be taken care of. But no, they got to go and build a fertilizer thing for NextEra over here. They got to give Theodore Roosevelt $40 million. How about that hunting lodge in Medina that got $500,000? I mean, how about the ski resort over at Huff Hills got a bunch of money? I mean, why should they get that money? So, yeah, that's why I have to vote for it, because if the state's got money, the government's going to blow money because it's so easy to spend someone else's money. And so I agree with that. There's going to be a lot of good come out of this, but it's really the immoral use of the money that is the problem. And our government was set up for people with morals.
Exactly.
And we don't have them anymore.
You just hit it right there for me. I mean,
yep.
The problem is the people that are making the laws and spending the money. I mean, in my opinion, we can do away with property taxes with as much money as the state makes. I mean, they just gave what was the oil companies? What did they get? Like
they got the tax break where the extraction tax, where it usually went up to 6.5%, got capped at 5%, and re-stimulation wells got minimized down to like 2 or 2.5% versus the 5 to 5.5% or 6.5%. And one of the things that came up with that during session was they're like, well, we can't prepare numbers on it. Well, North Dakota Restored or Bakken Restored, there's 7,500 capped wells. It took me like 30 seconds to find a projected number of how many wells were capped up at the moment, waiting to be pumping again. And I mean, you're up there. So like, that's the other thing too, Jeff, and back to your wasteful spending and giving money to their buddies. Like, I think that we need to start looking at how many of these breaks we're giving to these companies that are essentially robbing us anyway. So that's,
I gotta make a prediction. I might have to resign if I'm really off, but this is what I'm going to say. I think the tax proposal passes with 65 to 70% of the vote. I really think so. I mean, look, I think we need to do a poll on it. I would really like to see those results. But the circles that I run in and all the rest of there are 4 of you run in, we're in a realm where we talk about policy, where we really, really dig into this measure. Look, I heard about the same percentage of people supporting it and opposing the term limits petition. I thought it was going to be close, and that thing passed with flying colors. This is the same thing with the property tax thing. People really don't dig that deep in it. They see an issue they really support, they're going to vote for it. And I think this is just one of those issues where they're going to say, look, Jeff hit on it. The property tax, the state money has been going everywhere besides my pocket, and I'm going to punish the lawmakers for doing that, and I'm going to get my own tax money back. So I bet it's going to be 65%, 65-35. Now, if it fails 35%, the prediction was made by Jeff. It wasn't made by me. But I think it'll be 65.
He's blaming it on you, Jeff.
So which one?
So what is the what are your feelings?
The property tax measure 10 years ago had what, 22% in favor? It was low. It was 20-some%.
Might have
so
been.
to get to 65, that's quite a switch. But I think it's going to pass. I mean, I'll tell you why, because Eleanor Magrum says she's for it. So if she's for it, then it's going to win. She's got a good way of predicting these things.
So Brandon, right quick, what are your thoughts on the measure then? Are you for it, against it? What do you see with it?
I'm for it. No. I think you said me, or do you say SuAnn?
Yep, I said Brandon. Okay.
Yeah, I'm for it. I'm gonna publicly support it. I think that Rick has put some work into it. As SuAnn, Jeff, and I put forward a primary residence property tax exemption. I still stand by that. I think that's a really fantastic plan. That being said, Rick has put a lot of work into this. I'm proud of the work he's done. I think that there's a lot of ways to eat an elephant. I think that Rick's plan, takes care of the big things. So yeah, I think I'm going to support it, and I hope your viewers support it as well. So I'll say this as well. I know a lot of the people that Rick's working with. I think that a lot has changed between 2012 and now. First of all, with the language itself, but also just about how things are marketing. I think that there's two things that could stop this. I think the first thing is he doesn't get the signatures, which I doubt that's going to happen. But if he doesn't get the signatures, obviously that's the dead end. The second is that if some group comes in and spends $5 million opposing it, maybe they could stop it. I just think that the natural tendency of people over the last decade is that they're going to support property tax, getting rid of property tax. And I think that Rick's proposal is just, strong enough for when people read it, they say that a lot of work has gone into it. So I would expect it to pass with good numbers. So, but again, if I'm wrong, Jeff made the prediction. So
Yeah.
How about you, SuAnn? Where are you at on that one?
Well, I share a lot of the same reservations that Jeff talked about, but last fall when the property tax statements came out, I saw one from Wilton that that had a assessed value of like $215,000, and the tax was over $4,000, and that's what really made you go, wow, because $215,000 doesn't buy you a lot of houses. Would be a 50 or 60-year-old home. And so somebody, might be able to, to swing a mortgage for a house to buy that house. But now all of a sudden you're saying you got to come up with another $350 a month to pay the taxes on it. And it prices lots of people out of home ownership. And so that became very real, seeing that. So again, government at all levels really hasn't been able to govern themselves or to really fix this rising problem. So again, it's one of those things. It's like there's lots of stuff to fix about this, but it's hard to vote against it.
Yeah. Well, I think really the takeaway is this needs to be a warning shot across the bow if it doesn't pass. People are tired of it. People are
Marvin, it has to pass.
It has to pass.
If it doesn't pass, the legislature is going to say the people said don't need property tax reform. We have to get it passed. Like I said, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed, or the rural areas are going to really get clobbered. But I think it has to pass, or we're not going to get anything done at the legislature for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's like the election initiative. I have my reservations about one line in there because of that retroactive date. And you and I have talked about that, Jeff, and I've talked with others about it. But really the bulk of what that does is it's going to fix a lot of issues that you've already been trying to fix.
Well,
So-
you can't always throw all good for perfect.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we've had our conversations with Coachman and Lydia on that on previous shows too, on the retroactive date. So it's not me trying to throw water on a good bonfire, but you know, but you know, the thing with these petitions, I think people get so burnt out on it. As you look at the Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber of Commerce over the last decade has started subgroups where they've funded millions of dollars into killing citizen-driven petitions. So I'm kind of waiting to see all the financials come through on the 31st of January here to see what kind of pact they started to come against the property tax and against the election initiatives.
They wouldn't do that, would they?
You want a list of names of the provided by that they've ran in the last 10 years? I can give it to you. So it's one of those things, like we see funding coming through these agencies again, like North Dakota United, like the Chamber of Commerce, like the League of Cities, where they're putting out and they're donating millions of dollars or quarters of millions of dollars into trying to kill petitions with advertising, when the Home Roots group, the that's carrying these petitions, just doesn't have the funding to compete, and that's unfortunate too. So, because you look at like the election initiative, as far as I know, they haven't taken any money from out of state. You look at Becker's initiative, as far as I know, there hasn't been a lot of big donor dollars from out of state on that stuff either. But you take a low budget like that and you stack it against $1 million of funding for advertising and flyers and the BS that comes in the mail, like the attack ads against you guys, it's ridiculous. And I think that needs to stop too. But that's a conversation for a different night.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like a fun one.
Yeah, well, we know how I feel about things that come in the mail. So
That's funny.
well, I'm gonna start a map wall this year of all the attack ads that come out against people over the legislative session. I want a flyer from every district.
We can post them up behind us, right?
Yep, we'll put them up on the wall. Oh, look, here's one against Brandon. Here's
All right, guys.
Let's see who can get the most, right?
Yeah, it's a race.
It's probably Jeff. I'd guess Magrum. It only helps though.
Yeah. Well, do you guys have anything to add? It's been an amazing hour plus already tonight. Like, you closing thoughts on what you want to do? Like, just show up for this endorsing convention on Saturday so we can get you moving forward.
Yeah, we're certainly hoping that people won't be afraid of a little cold weather. I mean, I guess I never have been, and that they'll turn out.
Your guys' last endorsing convention was amazing, by the way. That was the first one that I spoke at, and it was awesome to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're hoping that, of course, I'm hoping that we don't have any competition. It's always welcomed, but I think that we have such a great thing going on here in District 8 that I hope we get a couple more years, one full term in office. I think that we can show the state, what conservative policymaking looks like if we just have some more time. And I think that conservatives are going to have a really, really fantastic election. I believe that in this primary and general election. So we need all hands on deck. Hopefully we can start that winning tradition in District 8 this Saturday.
Well, throughout the year, I mean, once we get past the convention and we get closer to the primary, if you guys want to come back on and chat a little bit more, you're more than welcome. Once we get closer to November, it's always fun to talk with all of you. So definitely don't be afraid. You know where to find us.
Hey, right quick before we go, Jeff, you sent me something earlier today, the Northwest Landowners, their conference.
They got the Constitutional Conference next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, the 17th and 18th. I do believe it is. Yep. Next Wednesday, Thursday, 17th and 18th of January. It's $25 to go if you're a member. I think people should become members. It's $150 otherwise, so you might as well become a member for $100 and pay $25 for the conference. The Northwest Landowners are the premier defenders of property rights in North Dakota. They were very helpful last session. Derek Broughton works with them. He's the best lawyer in the state, in my opinion. Troy Coons is executive director, Northwest Landowners. These guys, they care. I mean, they put in a lot of time on their own dime and fight for property rights for the people. So giving them $100 membership fee to help the cause, and then the $25 to go to the conference. They got some excellent speakers. Trent Luce is moderator. Yeah, it's going to be a worthwhile. It's right in Bismarck at the Bismarck Hotel and an event center. So yeah, anybody that wants to hear some good speakings are going to be talking about pore space, property rights, the adder, what I was talking about, the 33% above market value. So there's some really good, going to be some great information and teaching on the constitutional private property rights, how the Constitution addresses that. So yeah,
I am signed up already.
Cool.
Me too.
Good deal. Well, I really do appreciate your guys' time. SuAnn and Brandon, it was nice to have a conversation with you. It's the first time, obviously, that I've met you, and so thank you guys for your time. I do appreciate it. And Jeff, as always, thank you for your time. Jeff's kind of a regular on the show, so we're always glad when he comes on. So thanks again, Jeff.
Did you know, real quick, Jeff was the first person I called when I decided I was running for Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Really?
You caught me off guard. I was like, you're a little late, Marvin. But God, I knew you were the perfect candidate for that job. So I hope you're going to be ready to go next time. But be ready a little earlier before the convention. I mean, you were before the convention, but not.
Yeah.
Like the day before or what?
Well, my campaign manager fired me, so if I run for statewide again, I'm gonna have to find somebody else.
I think you have a bright future in government if you want to get in, but I mean, just be ready to go next time, and I think you probably have gotten your name out enough now, especially in this area, that you have a jump start. I think you made a good impression statewide.
Yeah. No, and you guys, like, I hope we're getting you out across the state too, because I mean, you're not really just representing District 8, which you are. And I had this conversation with the District 30 candidates. Like, you guys are there for the whole state. Like, yep, you're there to represent your base, but it's nice to know that I don't live in your district, but I can still get a hold of you guys.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. And having that contact is amazing to know.
Yeah, we got the great District 8's got the best team. I mean, I'm hoping and praying we keep it together for another term. And I was on District 28. You guys remember that was a very unfriendly team. So the team we have here is and very helpful to the public, very approachable. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about Brandon, SuAnn. They're easy to talk to, approachable, and willing to do the work. And it's fun serving with a good team that cares about the state and the people in the state. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I saw on the website I need to update your guys' picture a little bit. It was a little fuzzy, so I will fix that for you guys too. But again, thank you guys so much for everything you did this last session.
Yes.
Looking forward to seeing you getting sworn in this next session.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna skip it. I hope to see you in November. So,
it's a
Lord willing, we'll be back.
There you
All
go.
right.
Appreciate it, you guys. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
So that is District 8's team. Jeff Magrum, SuAnn Olson, and Brandon Prichard. And their convention, their endorsing convention, is this Saturday down in Hazleton at the Hazleton School at 1:00. So,
yeah, that'll be great to see. Hey, before we get off, Shilo,
sure.
Those of you that didn't see, there was kind of a blowout up in Williston last night, and that's been pressure that's been building for a long time, folks. I mean, but the bigger question that I've heard on that stuff, and not even just that, the Stenjum stuff, is why is nobody getting prosecuted for what's happened? Williston was what, $356 million unaccounted for, something like that. 21
like that, yeah.
The Stenjum with all of his emails being deleted, stuff like that. And what I'm hearing, and I can't confirm, is it's not that they don't want to prosecute. It's they're having issues finding state's attorneys that are willing to prosecute those involved. So you got to remember that, because your state's attorneys are your elected officials too. And if you got ones that are coming back up for election this year, you should probably be asking them about where they would stand on those issues. If you got a meet and greet opportunity with them, if they're showing up at your local endorsing conventions, if they're asking for you to vote for them, you should be asking them if they're willing to defend the people's money or to bring forward the truth of things that happened. So Bismarck, we know Burleigh County won't prosecute the Stenjum stuff because the gal that used to work in Wayne's office is now working at the county. So I would put that at about 99% we won't see our state's attorney trying to prosecute that case.
There isn't any of them that will, and that's the thing that's frustrating to me is you know, when it comes to stuff like this, everybody's first thing is, well, we'll sue you. What they don't understand is to sue the government, you need to find someone that will actually do that, and you're not going to.
Yep.
You're just not going to, because they take their oath to the bar. They don't take their oath to their country. I mean, Williston's a classic example. Look at what happened with Luke, with that state's attorney. She's a former JAG officer. She's not going to do nothing for the local people.
Well, even look at the issues that Megan's gone through up in Benedict just over chickens.
Yep.
I mean, I think the last count was we were at like 42 different attorneys trying to help there, and every one of them came back saying conflict of interest.
So now my phone blew up last night over that deal. Obviously, I'm in the Williston area. We've talked about this. We've had Dawn Hollingsworth on before. She was actually the center of attention out there or over there yesterday. And so the stories that I'm getting is when they called the point of order, they walked out and called the cops. So correct me if I'm wrong, but once somebody calls a point of order, aren't they able to do whatever they need to do or get the commission back on track? Or how does that work, Marvin?
Robert's rules is a little shady for me.
Yeah.
That's where I get a little gray. Like I've read through Robert's rules, but that's such an extreme situation that I don't know what the proper steps would be. I do know that they walked out of the room and the police were called. I haven't had a chance to follow up enough on it to know moving forward what to do. But it's sad that we're at that point. And it's sad that this information's been out here for 4 years already. That there was these dealings going on. And it's sad the fact that it had to come to the state auditor bringing out all this information. And it's sad that we're still moving forward to the same old drum. And that's back to the conversation we just had with Jeff too. Shady people do shady stuff. And shady elected officials are going to continue to be shady elected officials.
Yeah.
So when you have those dealings going and you have that back scratching going, they're going to do anything they can to keep that power. And it's time that we start removing them from office. It's time that media stops calling us crazy conservatives because we're upset there's almost $500 million missing.
It's kind of funny that you use the term crazy conservatives, because when you listen to these people running for office, whether it be the state legislature, I mean, it happened with John Hoeven. I imagine it's going to happen with Kevin Kramer, and we'll talk a little bit about him in a second. But they all talk that way, but then you hear the other side going, well, they're ultra conservative and this and that, but they talk ultra conservative until they're elected, and then they go back to being what they are. And I mean, their voting records say it all, right? I mean, that's how we know who they are, is how they're voting. So,
Well, you want the prime example, the Stop the Steal event on the Capitol steps right after the election in November of 2020. We had Hovind, we had Armstrong, we had Kramer all standing up on those Capitol steps, giving great big speeches to the people in the crowd. They got to Washington, their Twitter messages changed, their text messages changed, their Facebook posts changed to the exact opposite of what they told us while they were standing on those steps. And that's where I find disappointment. It's, don't tell me one thing when you're here in Bismarck and then do another when you're there in Washington.
yeah.
Same with, don't tell me you're going to do one thing when we're in Hazleton and then go to Bismarck and do another,
Right. Yeah. So obviously I brought up Kevin Kramer's name, and I'd like to comment a little bit on that whole deal. Obviously when all that happened and Officer Deputy Paul Martin was killed, it was a bad deal, and we came out and we talked about mental health issues and stuff like that, but we're not hearing too much about this situation anymore, and it's kind of bothersome because we go and we hear about how we need to vet our candidates and this and that, and let's face it, all this aside, Kevin Kramer hasn't done a whole lot for the state of North Dakota. Hasn't. Whether it be giving money to not Israel, but over there where Russia's fighting.
Oh, over to the Ukraine.
Yeah, over to Ukraine and different things. But my thing is I'm disappointed in him in the fact that he hasn't. Obviously, there was drugs involved and different things, but he hasn't come out and said anything. Not one thing. And it's really bothersome when when the posts that he does make, it seems like it's just business as usual. I mean, I'm really disappointed that he hasn't come out and whether it be drugs or whatever the case may be, maybe he needs to start being the face of some of this stuff and helping with legislation or however you want to put it. But there's nothing there. And that's disappointing because he's just went boop. So what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to just plug our noses and vote for him again and give him another term? I mean, because as far as I'm concerned, if you look at who's running against him on the other side, they're pretty much a pea in the same pot. She might be a little bit more crazier, but it ain't going to be much different. So what do? Do we plug our nose and vote for her and give her a term? And then, when she fails, like we know that she's going to, then maybe us conservatives will have another candidate. I mean, what do we do? I mean, he's not really giving us anything. And then he comes out, the other thing comes out for President Trump. Where was he when President Trump needed him? Where was he?
What I'm talking about.
And now all of a sudden we're gonna kiss up to President Trump because the Trump train is coming, whether you agree with President Trump or not. I mean, I don't get it. Like, take a stand, do something.
I personally would just like to hear more from Kevin, like any sort of public statement. Like, where I gained a lot of respect for Kevin over the years was when he came out against BlackRock and he came out against these investments. And, he's had a long track record of working with conservative candidates in North Dakota and doing a lot of things to try and better the state. The silence over the last 2 years has been bothersome.
Mm-hmm.
It has. I would just like some sort of statement. and I'm not here to attack Kevin, but I would like to know why certain things have happened certain ways. And I don't want to have a private conversation at an endorsing convention. Like, let's talk about it. And we've invited him on the show, and it's not to attack Kevin. It was before this stuff even happened. More of a just have him on to talk. And that's where we run into a lot of issues, folks, is we all want answers. We all want some sort of statement. And I don't want a statement from Twitter.
Right.
Like, just say, hey, we are trying to work on some stuff. We are trying to help out this family. We are trying to help out the family of the officer that was killed. Like, give me something.
Yeah, and don't take my statements as that I'm trying to personally attack him and stuff. I can't imagine what's going on, but you still are a U.S. senator, and for you to go just silent is not right, especially with the situation that it is.
Yeah.
Like he posted today about standing behind law enforcement and stuff like that. Like if I was Paul's family, I'd take that as a slap in the face. Just because he's went silent. He has not, that's where I have the issue. I mean, politics aside, yeah, I don't agree with his voting record at all. However, they are supposed to work for us, right? And yes, we can agree to disagree on some things, but the amount of money that they've given to foreign countries and the stuff that's going on, how does a guy go from being worth 500,000 to 5 million in a short amount of time?
He sold his Mickey Mantle rookie card.
Well, we can all yeah.
Sorry for the joke.
No, I get it. But
I wish I could learn that math. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I'd at least be worth $10 instead of $1.
Yeah, I agree. Well, right quick before we go, I'm gonna run this again, that hand counting class that we're trying to get arranged here. It sounds like it's gonna be down in Bismarck in the beginning part of March. I still don't have the date set. It's gonna be on a Saturday, is what Crystal's talking about. So if you are interested in learning how to hand count, because the powers that be are saying that we can't do hand counting anymore, we need these machines. So we're trying to do our best. We have people from the Cause of America, North Dakota. We're trying to bring some people in to help with teaching the hand counting deal. And as those of you who don't know, Cause of America works with Dr. Frank and Mike Lindell. So we're trying to get a class together and spread it that way. So if you are interested in learning how to hand count and what to do, please reach out to Crystal. Her phone number is there, her email address. You can either call, text her, or email her. Let her know that you're interested. And by Friday, I'm hoping that we have a for sure date on when it's going to be. I do know that it's going to be in Bismarck. I'm 95% sure on that. So again, the hand counting class, if you're interested in learning to hand count and be a part of your elections wherever you live, this is your chance. So go ahead and get a hold of Crystal. Her number is there on the screen, 701-721-1718. You can call her or text her, probably text her because she's a working lady too. And her email address is there as well. So you can either call, text, or email her. So other than that, Marvin, I don't really have any. Oh, we have a comment here. Bob, what's he say? Kramer lost his son and his job when his son killed Deputy Paul Martin. Yep. Yeah, it's a hard situation. I just wish he'd come out and say something and, not play it off like it didn't happen. And I don't know that he's doing that. It's time to get out there and talk, Kevin. So you're welcome to come here or however you want to do it. But I encourage you. It's time. We need to hear from you, and so we can move on. So
real quick before we go, next 3 shows, folks. Rick Becker on Friday, Ben Koppelman and his running mates on next Tuesday, and then the following Friday we are going to be off for the evening.
Yes,
we have an event that came up, so Shilo is going to be going one direction. I'm going to be going another, so we won't have a show in 2 weeks on Friday. After that, I'm not sure where we're going. We have some other people that we're looking at getting on, so we will keep on going because it's election season. So if
we're trying
for office, if you want to get on, get a hold of us, let us know.
Here's our email address. You can go to our website and contact us through there as well. If you guys, if your endorsing convention is coming up, if you got candidates that have announced, you can let us know. We certainly appreciate it. We'll reach out to those people and try and get them on. So, but that's what we're trying to do, is get the information out there and let the candidates, whether we agree with them or not, say their piece and make their bid to the people. So,
all right, but yeah, that's where I'm at, Shilo. I'm good other than that.
All right, well, folks, we will see you on Friday with Dr. Rick Becker, and we're going to be talking property tax. And I imagine there's some other issues that we'll be talking about too, but he's going to come on and give us an update on the property tax. If you guys got any questions on that, feel free to email us, or better yet, tune in on Friday night and we'll get your questions on there for him. So, all right. Have a good evening.
All right.